Can you remember the first open world game you ever played? I can. It's this one. This literal cartridge. The first open world game I ever played was The Legend of Zelda. One of the most beloved games of all time. And yet, well, we'll get to that. Time to get me some angry comments. Play the intro. Open world games existed before The Legend of Zelda. Text adventures let you wander where you like, and Elite let you fly around procedurally generated space. Then came the earliest free-roaming RPGs, High Glide in 1984 and The Legend of Zelda in 1986. Open world is what it sounds like. Instead of moving from level to level in a set sequence, you can go where you like, and that's about it. The concept of open world combines really well with emergent gameplay, which is where the developers give you the tools to do what you want to do, and the systems work together to allow you to do things maybe even the developers didn't expect. It's the difference between this specific block moves down when you push it, and here's a full physics engine so you can move all the blocks anywhere you want and use them to create unimaginable horrors. You mash together open world and emergent gameplay and you get go anywhere, do anything, which is an incredibly lofty promise, but obviously meaning within the bounds of the game world and mechanics. The Grand Theft Auto games are open world games that use emergent gameplay. The Just Cause series lets you get up to all sorts of nonsense, blowing things up, between grapple hooking yourself onto helicopters. And of course, there's the most recently released Zelda game at the time of posting, Tears of the Kingdom. The developers expected you to build vehicles, but they never expected this. Thanks for having levels of free time and imagination of which I can only dream. I have a full-time job which drains me of both. Although this is the first video since this channel got monetized, so I guess this is kind of my job now too. You can join the channel if you want to pay me to play Zelda. More on that later though. Do like and subscribe though, that costs you nothing. Today's open worlds are a lot more guided. GTA 5 as a prime example gives you a world you can roam around and do what you want in, but also gives you a mission structure. There's always a pointer telling you where to go and what you need to do.
He's already here.
Assassin's Creed takes this too far in my opinion. It gives you an open world without so many emergent gameplay opportunities. It's always telling you where you need to go to progress the story, or just to make an NPC smile and maybe you get some gold or something. You know, I really loved Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but these are open world games without exploration, which begs the question, what's the point? Why am I just taking longer to get to the bits that are very obviously just traditional levels? The original intention of the open world was exploration, the feeling of discovery. Shigeru Miyamoto used to like wandering off in the forests and caves near his home when he was a child, once finding an underground cave system he could explore with a lantern. Then, a few years later, he turned that into a video game. And it was a great game. Absolute stone-cold classic. And very well received then and now. It's a shame it's impossible to play it today. Impossible, Bill? Impossible? Yes. The Legend of Zelda has had re-release after re-release. Most recently the Zelda Game & Watch, and you've almost certainly got it sitting on your Switch. And you can certainly play those, but the original game, and the experience it offered, it's effectively lost media now. And how's that? It's not that lost, it's here. Holding it. Well, it's all the fault of Johannes Gutenberg, who invented the movable type printing press in around 1440. The machine could print up to 3,600 pages in a workday, much more than manual copying or printing could manage. While this was probably overall a good thing, the downside is that the free flow of information and books eventually led to the internet, where people could post complete guides to The Legend of Zelda. Damn you, Gutenberg! You ruined Zelda! See, this game from the beginning of its development was all about exploration and discovery. But you can't have exploration and discovery in a world where information is just so freely available. Just don't look, okay, sure. But it's not just you has to not look, it's your friends and your family, and everyone at your school too. The Legend of Zelda is deliberately obtuse. It's not something that you alone can figure out, but if you follow a guide, it takes a lot of the fun out of it. When I was playing this game as a kid, I didn't get very far. I didn't have a guide and I didn't have friends who played it. The manual tells you how to get to the first dungeon, and I could do that, but after what you get from the manual, the game was just completely impenetrable to 7-year-old Bill. This game works if you know a load of people who also play it, and like monkeys on typewriters, eventually you figure it out together, swapping secrets on the playground. Nobody had a guide, except for the hints they would share with one another. Unfortunately, many of my school friends wanted to do rubbish things like go outside. There were some woods near my house, and instead of playing the game that emulated Miyamoto's childhood, I was having kind of Miyamoto's childhood, except in some woods in a suburb in the West Midlands instead of the forests, mountains and valleys of Kyoto, Japan. We just used to cycle out to the local woodlands and see what we could find. If we had been playing Zelda though, I bet none of us would finish the game individually. This was a multiplayer game. You didn't necessarily all sit around the TV at the same time, but you and your friends would figure it out together. In fact, I'd say a close analogy to it today, although on a much smaller scale, is the escape room. You and your buddies are locked in a room and you figure it out together. The Legend of Zelda was the original escape room. The game starts by shoving you into a world with a goodbye and good luck.
I don't recall saying good luck.
There's no indication of where to go or what to do. Unless you read the manual, then you know to go into this cave and get your sword and where to go to find the first dungeon. But after that, you're off on an adventure. Unfortunately, aged 7, this was a mystery I wasn't really equipped to solve.
Nancy Drew says that all you need to solve a mystery is an inquisitive temperament and 2 good friends. And I've got an inquisitive temperament.
I did eventually beat the game. Today. Now, as I'm writing this script. Here's some footage of the first time in my life I beat Ganon. I did it on original hardware on the original cartridge I had when I was a kid. 33 years after I first played this game on this cartridge, I finished it. You know what I did? I opened my smartphone and followed a guide off zeldadungeon.net. Let's be honest, only way this was happening. And if you want to play Zelda today, that's how you're playing it too. It's not worth the frustration of wandering the overworld, aimlessly bombing walls and burning bushes until you eventually find one that leads somewhere. You need a crew, like kids had the first time this game was in the shops, or a guide. There's no shame in that. Had I not looked anything up, this might have taken me another 33 years. And I'm saying all this as someone who prefers not to use guides. I usually quite like the feeling of discovery when playing a video game, but I got the feeling that The Legend of Zelda is designed so that you can't really discover it alone. At least not without an awful lot of time, repetition, patience and note-taking. It's entirely possible you've done that, and you felt a massive feeling of accomplishment having done so, and I don't want to take that away from you. Well done. It's really cool that you did that. But you still weren't playing The Legend of Zelda as it was originally in the late 80s, because you didn't have a crew, you didn't have hints. We don't know if it was all Miyamoto's original intention that kids would basically have to solve this game by working together. But when the game arrived in America, Nintendo of America boss Minoru Arakawa thought it may be a little bit too obscure, and he wanted to include a map with the game. Miyamoto was apparently against the idea, and they compromised by including it, but having it sealed to be used only as a last resort. I don't have my original box and instructions, but I can tell you they did a very similar thing with A Link to the Past. Let me just very gently break into this box here. You got your manual, you got your map, got your advertising, and then you got this little top secrets booklet here. Look, still sealed. No idea what's in that, but it's not going to be a full guide. The hint generally has sort of gone the way of the dodo since the internet. We've got to know everything, all of it, all the time. Information, misinformation, disinformation. Our brains don't care. We just want all this stuff to sort of distract us from the drudgery of everyday life and give us a little bit of excitement. The excitement of learning without the effort of discovery. So if you want a hint for a particular section of The Legend of Zelda that you're stuck in, I mean, the easiest thing to do is to look up a full walkthrough on that there internet. You grab a whole guide, look up the bit where you got stuck. Ah, well, you may as well have a little peek at the next bit, eh? Because it's all in there. Back in my day... Sorry, in my day, we had friends, magazines and TV shows, and if you were really stuck, you'd call the Nintendo hotline. David Sheff's Game Over said that for a while, the most asked question on the Nintendo hotline was how to get past this hungry dude. We would gather all these hints together with our buddies and we'd figure out where we were going and what we were doing, and nowadays, you don't really have that option. You either have all the information or none of the information. And that's why, in my view, The Legend of Zelda is unplayable today, at least in its original form. It's a great game today, as it always was. This video is not about the quality of the game itself. It has always been a fun game to try and get into however you want to do it. But the high availability of information has made it impossible to capture the original feeling of playing it back in 1987, whether you're playing on original hardware or not. So how could we get closest to that original Legend of Zelda experience in 2024? I know! Randomisers. There is a randomizer for The Legend of Zelda that can pretty much scramble anything about the game. Item locations, dungeon layouts, cave entrances, all sorts. I haven't played it. My preferred Zelda randomizer is A Link to the Past randomizer. This is purely an item randomizer, but because of the way the game works, that also changes up the dungeon order. For example, find the fire rod before the lamp like I did here, and your first dungeon might well be Skull Woods. Although it just so happens in our example seed here, I did Eastern Palace first. That's not necessarily common, and with this one it wasn't in the logic. See, it's not completely random, this randomizer. It always places items in such a way that it's possible to finish the game. This adds elements of logic to it. You know, or you look up, what you need for each dungeon, and if you follow the breadcrumbs, there's a kind of quote-unquote intended path, even though it's mostly random. You can break that path by, for example, navigating dark rooms without the lamp as I did here to finish Eastern Palace before you're supposed to. There are maps online to help you do this, but it's wholly unnecessary. If you're going to learn any tricks, I recommend the Ice Palace bomb jump. It can skip a lot of the dungeon. Look, I'm basically an expert at it. This is even more useful if you're in what we call Go mode. That's where you've got every item you need, so you don't need to open any more chests or search around for anything. You can just clear the remaining dungeons and go get Ganon. Here, my Go mode item was the ice rod needed to kill the boss in Turtle Rock, which I duly went and did, and the gods rewarded my courage with 50 bucks. Randomizer has a sort of built-in sense of humour. In my game, sealed away for millennia beneath a pedestal that could only be opened by the one true hero after gathering the 3 pendants of strength, wisdom and courage, were 3 bombs. I found the Master Sword in a random cave somewhere. There's scripted humour too. If you're not into speedrunning, it's worth talking to everyone and seeing what nonsense they have to say. If you're good at the base game, then of course those skills will transfer to Randomizer as well. It's the same game at the end of the day. But there are a few other skills besides, such as being able to beat Ganon without the silver arrows. I never found them in this playthrough. He tells you where they are, and in my case that was Turtle Rock, but I was in Go mode by the time I got there, so I skipped most of the chests. Had I not, I'd have had an easier Ganon fight. But if you time your sword spins right, you can beat him without the silver arrows. There are other neat little tricks that come in handy in some games, but the main skill this requires that the original doesn't is figuring out where to go next. You have to look at what tools you've got, what needs to be achieved, and use your own ingenuity to match those up, much like The Legend of Zelda. I used to think you needed to know a game like fully inside out to play a randomizer of it, but maybe that's not quite true. If The Legend of Zelda could be such a big success with how obtuse it was, and how much it rewarded just exploring and trying things out, maybe then you can play a randomizer for a game you don't know quite so well. So I tried out Super Metroid and A Link to the Past combo randomizer, and this, I think it might just be my new favourite open world game. I love A Link to the Past randomizer for all the reasons I've said, but having played quite a lot of it, it's starting to get a bit routine now. I know all of the item locations and what items I need for each dungeon like the back of my hand. Sure, my routing could improve, my execution could improve, but it's not feeling as much like an adventure of discovery anymore just because I've played it a lot. Throwing Super Metroid in there mixes it all up and makes it new again, and I'm having a great time. I only got Super Metroid recently. I'd finished it once on an emulator a few years ago, but I played it once through on real hardware for the first time, had a great time, and then went straight to the randomizer. I like to imagine a storyline where there's some kind of dimensional rift between Hyrule and Zebes where Link and Samus can't pass through, but it's caused all the items to get mixed up and they have to pass them to each other to relay their way through their respective missions. I don't know all the item locations in Super Metroid yet, so there are plenty of times when I get stuck and I'm forced to look around to find my way, but within the confines of where I know I can go with the items I have. These randomizers are open, but not completely, so exploring is less aimless and frustrating while still being rewarding. Start with A Link to the Past randomizer though. It's the best way to play Zelda like it's 1987. You can't ask your friends in the playground if you're stuck, but you can go onto the official Discord or subreddit and say, "I've got these items, now what?" And then with some friendly hints and tips, the community will help you figure it out. If you want to find the item locations you might have missed, well, get a map and start crossing things off. There's software to help you do this, and to help you automate some of the discovery, but I recommend an old-fashioned notebook. It is an adventure after all. Here, I spotted the hammer on a ledge. The hammer's one of the few items in the game that you always need, but to get it from there I need the Titan's Mitts, the mirror, the hook shot and the moon pearl, so make a note of it, come back later. If you finish this game, A Link to the Past, and you've found most of the heart pieces, and you're well on your way to getting started with Randomizer. There are plenty of streamers playing it, so you can watch them and get a feel for how to route the start of the game. Andy's the one I watch most often, and you can also check out the times that it was played on the Games Done Quick stages. Links in the description, of course. There are regular challenges on the Discord and on the subreddit, so you can compete and compare your times against other people, but you don't have to. If you prefer, you can just take your time and do it for the fun of the adventure. You're told your time at the end of the game, so you can retry and get better at it, or compare with other people if that's what you want to do. You don't have to record it yourself or anything complicated like that. Just if you are competing, stay away from the reset button and the save states. Or don't, and play it yourself how you want to play it. Either way, you should be playing A Link to the Past Randomizer if you're not already, because it's the closest you can get in 2024 to the original 1987 Legend of Zelda experience. Hey, so as I said, this is the first video since the channel got monetized, so thanks so much to everyone who subscribed and helped me hit that magic number of 1,000. I'm still new at this and just kind of playing around and having fun and seeing what works. So Minerva and I are really pleased that so many people seem to enjoy our nonsense. You can now pay to become a member of the Retro Sofa if you want, and you get to see videos a little early, and there's some other perks. But I've decided I'm not going to do member-only video content. I put a lot of time and effort into these videos, and that's the fun and the challenge of it. And I'm already doing as much as I reasonably feel like I can do. So chuck me some cash if you want, but you're not really missing out if you don't. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Do subscribe though, play some Zelda Randomizer, and thanks for joining me once more on the Retro Sofa. See you next time.